To live in the Forbidden City is to dwell within history, a statement once made by the eminent Ming dynasty figure Wu Chen. For centuries, this magnificent dwelling, hidden from the prying eyes of the public and shrouded with an enchanting air of secrecy, formed the epicenter of Chinese imperial power.
Dwell within history, that phrase caught me. What intrigues me is how architectural design can serve as a medium to translate history. Andrew, since you have some basic knowledge about the Forbidden City, what's the first detail that comes to mind about this intriguing place?
Well, Abigail, when I think of the Forbidden City, what immediately comes to mind is its iconic yellow roof tiles that signifies royalty. An exquisite embodiment of ancient Chinese architecture, the Forbidden City is as much a statement of imperial power as it is a work of art.
That's interesting, Andrew. So the yellow color symbolizes royalty. But is there any other cultural implication of this color or any other colors used in this monumental palace that you could highlight?
Honestly, Paul, while I know that colors like red and yellow hold certain significance in Chinese culture, the intricate details of this color symbolism are something I am not completely familiar with. Maybe, as we continue our exploration, we will discover those hidden connotations.
Also worth mentioning is the fact that the Forbidden City wasn't constructed overnight. It underwent various changes and modifications through different dynasties, each leaving their own unique architectural imprint on the palace. It will be fascinating to see how these shifts signify the changes in power dynamics, don't you think?
Absolutely, Abigail. That's the beauty of architecture. It has this unspoken language that not only reflects human creativity, but also serves as an enduring symbol of historical narratives. As we dive deeper into the Forbidden City, we might just come across those intriguing stories wrapped within its walls.
Imagine standing at the center of Beijing, gazing upon a magnificent complex spanning over 180 acres, structured with an intricate design of axial symmetry. That's the Forbidden City.
Axial symmetry. Now that's a design principle we don't see much of anymore.
That's true. The Forbidden City, built in the 15th century, adhered to the traditional Chinese philosophy of balance and symmetrical layout. The main axis, forming a straight line from the Meridian Gate to the Imperial Garden, boasts the most significant structures.
I've actually read about that. The largest and grandest buildings reside along this axis, right? That would communicate the emperor's authority.
Spot on, Paul. Now trying to figure out the significance of the yellow roofs, Andrew.
Yes, I am. Chest-like rooftops adorned with yellow glazed tiles, lots and lots of them. You said earlier that the yellow signifies royalty.
And so it does. You see, yellow, being associated with earth in the five elements theory of ancient China, was considered the center of everything, and thus symbolized the supreme power of the emperor.
How did the construction evolve over different dynasties?
Well, started by the Ming dynasty, the construction largely continued through the Qing dynasty. Each dynasty added buildings, adjusted layout, and even moved some structures, marking eras of transformation with their architectural footprints.
It's like a timeless canvas showcasing the legacy of multiple reigns. But hold on, what about these hidden Feng Shui elements?
The Feng Shui secrets. Designed as per Feng Shui philosophies, the Forbidden City embodies positive energy flow. The moat and mountains surrounding it, the use of water and greenery within, all were meant to ensure a harmonious environment. You see, the Forbidden City's design utilized plenty of gates and enclosing walls. Can you guess why that was?
As a defensive measure, perhaps?
Exactly, Andrew. In fact, an incredible number of gates, including the famed Meridian Gate that served as the main entrance. But managing these entrances wasn't a mere security measure. They also had social and ceremonial functions.
Can you elaborate on these ceremonial functions? That sounds interesting.
Of course. The Meridian Gate, for instance, served a dual purpose. Alongside being a grand entry to the palace complex, it was also the site of significant ceremonies, one being the announcement of the new lunar calendar.
Wow, that's certainly multifunctional. What about the walls?
The walls, too, were highly functional. Enclosing the city, these huge walls provided a much-needed security, shielding the royal premises from both invasions and prying eyes of commoners.
You mentioned the use of elaborate woodwork. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Certainly, Andrew. The intricate woodwork can be seen throughout the Forbidden City's buildings. This woodwork, often intricately carved, is a testament to the impeccable craftsmanship of the artisans of that era. It exemplified the grandeur and luxury of imperial life.
I'd love to hear about the secrets behind the city's construction. Were there any unique techniques or practices employed?
Undeniably, Paul. Interestingly, it's said that the city was constructed without using a single nail. Instead, traditional Chinese construction techniques, such as mortise and tenon joints, were used. This not only showcases the highly developed construction methods of the time, but also the harmonious blend of aesthetic beauty and practical purpose. On that note, a significant part of the architectural marvel that the Forbidden City exhibits lies in its use of white marble terraces.
White marble, that must have been quite a sight.
It certainly was. The use of the pristine white marble in contrast with the vivid colours of the palace enhanced the grandeur. Besides, these terraces were not just for beautification. They also served as a functional foundation, adding to the structural stability of the buildings.
That seems like a wonderful blend of aesthetics and practical design. And what about the incorporation of nature in the city's overall layout?
Oh, the role of nature in the Forbidden City's layout is nothing short of fascinating. Gardens, man-made hills and moats were created, signifying a balanced harmony between the built architecture and natural elements. This intentional blending also represented idealized landscapes in Chinese culture.
Very interesting. Could you expand on the integration of indoor and outdoor spaces using courtyards?
Sure, Andrew. The Forbidden City had numerous courtyards apart from the grand three main courts. These smaller courtyards were often used for symbolic reasons, official use, and provided ventilation and daylight to the interiors. The underlying idea was simple, to blur the boundaries between indoor and outdoor.
So essentially, these courtyards allowed for a beautiful blend of Chinese architectural and natural elements. It's truly fascinating how they managed to imbue so much symbolism and function into every detail.
Speaking of symbolism, let's venture into the daily life inside the Forbidden City.
I'm curious, what would a day be like for someone living there?
Given that it was home to emperors, there's no doubt that there was an air of regality. From what I understand, lavish feasts were a common occurrence.
Indeed, the feasts had a grand scale unmatched elsewhere. Guests at these imperial banquets were often in the hundreds, sometimes reaching thousands.
I can only imagine how colorful and lively those feasts must have been. But what about women? How significant was their role in the city?
Women, especially the empress and concubines, played tremendous roles within the palace, from managing the imperial household to influencing politics. And let's not forget the elaborate rituals they had to follow.
That's fascinating. These roles and rituals must have created a singular and stirring dynamic within the palace walls. However, I wonder, how about educational facilities? Did the royal children receive any kind of special education?
Yes, the royal children got exclusive access to education within the confines of the city. They were prepared for their future roles from a young age by the best scholars.
Education tailored to their destined roles, establishing a systematic pipeline to the throne. Living in the Forbidden City was a complex and intricate affair. That's riveting, Abigail. Now it was also home to imperial guards and eunuchs besides the royal family, right?
Yes, Andrew. And the imperial guards were a crucial pillar of the Forbidden City's functioning. They were primarily chosen from the bravest soldiers of the Eight Banners, a military division under the Ming and Qing dynasties.
That makes complete sense. A place of such high importance would need the best security. But why were eunuchs employed in the city?
Traditionally, eunuchs were employed in royal courts across Asia to serve the royalty. It was believed they could be trusted around the royal women as they were castrated. In the Forbidden City, they started off as servants, but eventually grew to play significant roles in court politics, some even effectively running the empire.
That's something, isn't it? The power structure within the city must have been quite distinct, with emperors, concubines, soldiers, eunuchs and more. How did this interplay work?
Well, it definitely led to power struggles and courtly conflicts. Eunuchs, though servants, often had the ear of the emperor or the empress, giving them real political power. Many historical anecdotes suggest court intrigue as numerous factions vied for control or influence. In fact, one well-known power struggle involved a senior eunuch, Wei Zhongxian, who dominated the court during the early 17th century.
That certainly paints a picture of an elaborate socio-political framework within the Forbidden City. Factions, power struggles, courtly conflicts. It seems like there was never a dull moment.
Let's venture into the realm of color symbolism in this Forbidden City. The Chinese are known for infusing subliminal meaning into every aspect of their architectural design, and color is one of the most important.
So, here comes the red and yellow that you mentioned earlier. But can you tell us more about why these colors were so significant?
Certainly. In Chinese culture, red is the color of happiness, wealth, and prosperity, which made it an apt choice for the emperor's residence. The palace building's vermilion walls represented joy and celebration, marking a stark contrast against the solemnity within. On the other hand, yellow symbolized the center, earth, and was an exclusive color for the emperor, signifying his supremacy and nobility. Notice, Andrew, the ceramic tiles on most palace roofs are imperial yellow.
I see. Must have been like a divine light piercing through the Forbidden City. But were there other colors also present within the complex?
Yes, Paul, other colors were also used, but with less prominence. Green, representing spring and growth, is seen on less important structures. Also, blue, which symbolizes heaven and the east, was used on temples and altars.
Well, it seems that the city isn't just a marvel of ancient architecture, but also a canvas displaying Chinese color symbolism at its best. Abigail, I'm intrigued by how color played a role in denoting hierarchy and power within the city. Could you delve deeper into that?
Absolutely, Andrew. Here's the thing. Every minute detail in the Forbidden City held a significant symbolic implication, and color was a primal way to denote ranks and positions. Let me illustrate this to you. Starting from the emperor, yellow signified the center, the earth, and apparently it was an exclusive color for the emperor. It signified his power and his supremacy.
I see. So, the emperor was associated with the color yellow, which symbolizes the earth. That puts him in the role of the intermediary between heaven and earth, right?
Exactly, Paul. Such symbolism actually resonated across the nation, making yellow not just a color, but a symbol of the highest authority in the land.
That's a powerful symbol. What about the other occupants of the Forbidden City?
Other occupants also had their symbolic colors. Green roofs were for the crown prince, since green represented spring and growth, suggesting his potential to become the next emperor.
So basically, the rooftop color of each building itself was a coded message. I find it fascinating how, using color, they created a visually appealing hierarchy instead of a complex organizational chart.
Indeed, the Chinese paid great attention to these color codes, and they were strictly adhered to, reinforcing the social hierarchy at every glance. It's a brilliant, subtle, yet effective system which permeated not only the Forbidden City, but also the entire imperial China.
What an insightful way to implement hierarchy and power. It was visual, organized, and yet beautifully crafted into the very foundation of the city. What happened after the era of emperors, when the Forbidden City was no longer a royal residence?
Well, Paul, the Forbidden City was converted into a museum in the early 20th century.
That's right, Andrew. Known today as the Palace Museum, it holds a significant part of China's imperial past, with its collection of artifacts and artwork.
Abigail, considering your professional background, could you explain any changes to the city's structure that were necessary for this transformation?
In transforming a royal residence to a museum, preservation of the original structure was vital. Yet some changes were certainly needed. These included installing modern lighting, developing routes for visitors, and accommodating safety measures without compromising the city's authenticity.
Abigail, didn't this transformation also lead to some remarkable archaeological discoveries?
Absolutely, Andrew. In fact, it was during the transformation that they discovered a treasure trove of artifacts previously unknown. These findings offered an even more comprehensive perspective on imperial life and China's history.
Wow. So even though the city lives on as a museum, it continues to tell stories, revealing its secrets, one step at a time.
Let's explore how imperialism impacted the Forbidden City, shall we?
I believe it opened up the doors to international influence and put the palace in the global spotlight.
Definitely, Paul. During the Boxer Rebellion of 1899-1901, foreign forces caused significant damage to the Forbidden City, ultimately leading to its opening by Westerners. This phase also posed serious threats to the preservation of countless cultural relics and architectural aesthetics.
And the city underwent changes, not just structurally or aesthetically, but also in its role. From an emblem of imperial power, it's now a beacon of cultural and historical knowledge.
Right, Andrew. The transformation to a museum post the fall of the Qing dynasty symbolizes a shift from royal secrecy to public education, despite the challenges.
What kind of challenges are we talking about?
Among others, preserving the original architecture while accommodating modern amenities for the museum visitors, fighting harsh weather deterioration, and preventing the building from sinking due to its massive weight on the soft soil were major challenges. Moreover, the task of cataloguing millions of artifacts and keeping them safe was a Herculean task.
Sounds like it's been a relentless effort, both nationally and internationally, to conserve such an integral piece of history.
Absolutely, Paul. It's been a colossal task indeed, but the Forbidden City stands tall, now a symbol of China's resilience and a testament to its rich history and culture for the world to see. Now, this might sound obvious, but the Forbidden City's central positioning in Beijing wasn't just random. It was very strategic, right, Abigail?
Absolutely, Andrew. In fact, the city was carefully placed according to the principles of geomancy, ensuring its layout always faced south, symbolizing supremacy and holiness in Chinese culture. So essentially, the Forbidden City established the primary axis of Beijing.
And all other structures and streets in the city spread out from this primary axis?
Exactly, Paul. The city formed an epicenter, radiating its magnificence and symbol of power across the city, influencing its overall layout. This south-north principle of city planning resulted in the establishment of many palaces and temples on the same axis, in a descending hierarchy.
So the layout of Beijing was essentially a reflection of the grandeur and state of the Forbidden City?
Yes, Andrew. Furthermore, the importance of Feng Shui principles for symbolic positioning can't be understated. Being the Celestial Emperor's residence, the location of the Forbidden City was meticulously planned. The Forbidden City's north-south axis still aligns with the Imperial Ancestral Temple and the Altar of Earth and Agriculture, highlighting the significance of spatial relationships.
That's some deliberate planning. And I suppose by doing so, the emperors were cementing their power not just through the grandeur of the Forbidden City, but its strategic positioning within the entire layout of Beijing.
Absolutely. And beyond that, the axial planning of the Forbidden City and its impact on Beijing's layout played a major role in the growth and development of the city, shaping community interactions, transportation, and even regional architectural styles over the centuries. The Forbidden City, a cornucopia of treasures, is no less than an open-air museum, with almost 1 million treasures in the Palace Museum. Just thinking about it, it's breathtakingly impressive.
1 million? That's huge. What kind of treasures are we talking about here?
Well, Paul, it ranges from beautifully crafted jade pieces, gold and silverware, to incredible textiles, ceramics, and intricate calligraphy, each artifact with a story of its own.
But there were also countless treasures, lost or destroyed during wars and social unrest, right?
Unfortunately, yes, Andrew. Many of the priceless antiques were looted and some were significantly damaged during wars, especially the Second Opium War.
Man, it's like ripping pages out of a history book. But some of the stolen goods have been recovered, right?
Yes, Paul. Although the process is slow and complicated, there have indeed been successful recoveries. Some treasures found their way back from the auctions and private collections of various countries, as a result of increasing awareness and concerted international efforts against illicit trafficking of cultural artifacts.
Though the lost grandeur of the Forbidden City can never be fully restored, these efforts bring some consolation.
I agree, Andrew, they indeed do. Besides, the surviving treasures of the Forbidden City not only tell us the tale of a magnificent empire, but are also a testament to the sophistication and ingenuity of ancient Chinese crafts and arts.
Absolutely, Abby. You realize the incredible cultural impact of those artifacts which are now nurturing global understanding and appreciation for Chinese history and craft. After all, that's the real wealth, isn't it?
The lootings during wars must have been heartrending. How did these instances affect the Forbidden City and its legacy?
Andrew losing artifacts to war could be compared to erasing chronicles from history. One such incident was the infamous sacking of the Summer Palace, the royal retreat by the British and French troops during the Second Mopioxa War. Even though it was outside the Forbidden City, the loss was colossal. Some reports suggest that nearly 1.5 million artifacts were looted.
1.5 million? Abby, that's unimaginable. What sort of artifacts were they?
They range from art pieces and imperial seals to curios and bronzes. Many were age-old treasures, some dating back to the Song dynasty.
Wow! Losing such ancient artifacts would have robbed future generations of glimpses into their cultural heritage.
True, Andrew. But aren't there some stories about stolen antiques being found and restored?
Indeed, Paul. Over the years, some stolen pieces have been traced back, thanks to stricter regulations and increased awareness. The Tiger Ying, a ceremonial wine vessel dating back to the Western Zhou dynasty, is an incredible example. It turned up in a UK auction and was subsequently returned to China.
That's such a relief. Although restoring every lost treasure is practically impossible, every piece returned is a victory in itself.
Absolutely, Paul. The resounding tales of cultural resilience, coupled with concerted efforts for repatriation, reinforce how precious these structures and spaces are beyond the bricks and mortar. The city's place in pop culture, have you guys noticed it? Both in China and internationally.
Definitely, it's hard to miss. Like in the last Emperor film, they shot in the Forbidden City itself, portraying the life of Puyi, the final emperor. The movie showed the ostentatious world of the Forbidden City in an extraordinary fashion.
True, Abby. Also, there's the German series Sisi, which had its grand finale shot in the Forbidden City. It's used as a backdrop in multiple films. Hard to beat its magnificence, don't you think?
Oh yes, not just films, but in literature too. An Che-min's novel Empress Orchid paints a vivid picture of the tragedy, the infighting, and the decadence of the Forbidden City. It's a fictional account, but absorbing nonetheless.
Even beyond the borders of realism, the Forbidden City influences fantasy genres, as seen in novels like Cindy Pond's Silver Phoenix. It serves as an architectural backdrop, inspiring fictional settings.
From literature and films to myths, the city always finds its way. There's a tale about an empress who loved crickets, right? The myth goes that when the empress passed, thousands of crickets sang for her, mourning her death.
Oh, that's fascinating. And speaking of the supernatural, there have been rumored sightings of ghosts in the Forbidden City, supposedly screams echoing from the chambers late at night, mysterious lights and shadows shifting across the hallways.
Well, that is spooky but intriguing. But remember, guys, these are just myths and legends which add more charm to this historic place.
What a fascinating piece of architecture this Forbidden City is.
It's a testament to human ingenuity, isn't it? Its transformation from an imperial palace into a museum is a great symbol of conservation.
Yeah, the veil of secrecy surrounding it only adds to its charm. But it's beautiful how the city offers itself up as a museum now, sharing tales of its rich past with the world.
It does. Remember the anecdotes we shared about the emperors, the court intrigue, and even the lives of ordinary people inside the city?
Those stories, intertwined with its stunning architecture and the symbolism of its colors, make the Forbidden City a treasure trove of cultural and historical wealth.
Definitely. And it's interesting how this city, despite its secrecy, has shaped Beijing's layout. Its symmetric design and the positioning of the various buildings, they've had a significant influence.
Right, Abby. Not many architecture achieves that level of cultural, historic, and architectural significance. The Forbidden City, with its cultural harmony and the powerful stories it holds, has truly contributed to mankind's collective heritage.